All right. Hello. Welcome, Pathfinders, to the Find the Path podcast, not an actual play, the Find the Path podcast research check for the Ancestry Guide. Sorry, I'm pre-programmed to just immediately start launching into that.
I mean, Ross and I brought characters, so we can
Yeah.
go.
Let's
okay.
do this.
Our secret low-key, everyone has made an ancestor from the Ancestry Guide. We've recreated the people from the cover. I went android.
I want to be the bug guy.
So, of course...
Well, I'll be a lizard folk, sure.
Yep. I am Rick Sandage. I am one of your hosts here. I'm joined by Jessica Jenkins, the esteemed Jessica Jenkins, and
yes.
Ross Scoggin, the enigmatic Ross Scoggin.
With his familiar.
Familiar.
Yes, Amelia has joined us as well.
And
so.
Amelia.
Mm-hmm.
Our classic quartet of people here. People and cats. So yeah, we're here to continue our review series with another wonderful new book out for the Lost Omens lines. Today we're going to be talking about Lost Omens Ancestry Guide. And I don't just say it's great because Luis is a wonderful person and we really appreciate him coming on and talking to us sometimes. He's not even here, so we can say whatever we want.
Sure. It's great because there's, great stuff in it.
It's great. Let's talk about, well, actually, before we get into this standard disclaimer, we are partners, but we are not affiliated with Paizo Incorporated. And so that being said, this is more our opinion piece and not necessarily like a strict book review. Also, I think we're supposed to mention that they did give us a preview copy, or at the very least a free PDF of it. So
Yeah.
But that did not in any way sway our views.
True.
Be as critical as we want to be. So,
I got words. No.
Yeah, I guess let's go ahead and get this going. So we're going to be talking about this guy over here. Am I doing it? That one. Yep.
Yeah, I think so. That's the right way.
Got the right direction. I've got my cameras all over the place. So that is the Ancestry Guide. I like the
It's
cover.
good. I like the cover.
I think it really illustrates the sheer, diversity of all the different, I'm not even doing it anymore on purpose. It just happens now. But it does illustrate the sheer diversity of all the different peoples that are within this book.
Yeah. No, I certainly agree. And there are interesting choices for the cover. I mean, I love the Android. I've had an opportunity to play Android very briefly in Starfinder and for very briefly in 2 books of Iron Gods. So the androids are very Pathfinder, Starfinder kind of exclusive race. There's not really an analog to it in Dungeons and Dragons or many other D20 based games. And so I think that that's kind of coming out strong. And everyone is really excited about the sprites, so I'm not surprised they made
Sprites.
the cover.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's by far one of the more unusual creatures that you can find in this book. But,
sure.
I mean, there's all sorts of great folk to play as in here. So
that's true. So I suppose let's just start. Anybody have anything else to say about the cover? I like the lizard folk. I think he's cool looking.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait. Is he wearing clothes?
He's
wearing
a little
more clothes.
Yeah, he's got a little midriff exposure right there. He or she, I'm not positive which.
They are the most clothed lizard folk in this book. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. But
I'm going to assume he, because I think I'm using the Vesk. I think also they bring that up that the males are more colorful than the females, because I think they're getting to that whole like natural world thing where the males have to be like impressive and bright and colorful to impress the females.
Like peacocks.
So, yeah, like peacocks. Yeah, female peacocks are just a little sad looking. In comparison, they're not as fabulous. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say about the cover other than the fact that I think it looks really good. But to be fair, I don't know if Paizo really... I think they should still get credit for it, but I don't think it's ever any surprise now that second edition covers look beautiful.
True.
Whoever their new art team, or, I think it's a lot of the same art people, but their art team always knocks it out of the park. And
yeah.
Who did the cover of this?
I don't know.
Katarina Burmak. I've heard that name a couple of times. I think she does a lot of the Lost Omens covers.
Well, she does good work.
She does phenomenal work.
Yeah.
So yeah, shall we jump into this, guys?
Let's do it.
Also,
oh no, I can't fit.
If you have questions as we go, add those into the chat. we've also gathered some off Discord, and we'll sprinkle those in where they make sense. So, feel free to toss questions into the chat, and we'll get to them when we get to them.
Absolutely. Towards the end is the plan, unless something crops up and it just really makes sense for the moment. So this book has 3 chapters, 4 if you count the glossary and index, and the ancestral gear, we'll talk about it, but I think it's 2 pages long, so I'm not really sure it counts as a chapter so much. But it's more or less divided into expanded ancestries and heritages and new ancestries and heritages. Yep. So I suppose let's just start with the expanded. So yeah. Russ, do you want to launch into this?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say, for the expanded ancestry and heritage, ancestries and heritages. Apologies.
A lot of syllables.
Yes, it's true. Very many. So these are all options for ancestries and heritages that already exist. So you won't find anything like, I mean, in this chapter, you won't find anything you haven't seen before as far as like the name of that. Yeah.
There is a caveat, because the Azarketi or Gilman are supposed to be in that Absalom book, and that book's not out yet. So actually,
this is true.
This is an expansion on something that's not released. So that is very weird.
It is a little weird. I'm sure part of that is just, they haven't released that book yet.
Yeah, it got delayed a bunch.
Yeah, I understand they're still working on it. So,
Eric Mona and his precious baby. But I mean, I'm fine. Apparently, it's gonna be bigger than the core rule book. Whatever.
Yeah, fine with it. Yeah. For more details, also, we talked a little bit about it with Luis on an interview there.
That's true.
Definitely be sure to check that out if you're interested. But yeah, I mean, of course, in this case, we'll cover all of these in turn, but it's the Aasimar, the Azarketi, the Cat Folk, Changelings, Demphirs, Dustwalkers, Hobgoblins, Kobolds, Leshies, Lizard Folk, Orcs, Rat Folk, Tengu, and the Tiefling are all in this chapter.
Yes. So, and each... Oh, go on.
You can go. I was just going to say they're all higgledy-piggledy in there. So there's ancestries back-to-back with heritages.
Yeah, we'll talk about that towards the ends when we give our thoughts about it. I do have thoughts on that. But each ancestry gets 6 pages. Each of the heritages gets 4 pages. So you get a fair amount of information, and it's evenly distributed between them. So there's no real favorites in there. All the options in this section are uncommon, which is something I find is interesting just because it's... I'll go ahead and just kind of tackle a little bit of this now. I like that they're doing that because it means that here's a book full of a ton of options, but here's a book that the game master is going to tell you whether or not they're going to be good for the story that he's telling. So for instance, I imagine a game master just kind of come out and say, we're doing Iron Gods, everything Android is common. Or we're doing something in Garoon, so Cat Folk are a common ancestry here, so everything Cat Folk is common. Whereas if you're doing something in, say, I don't know. I don't really have an easy example for here where it's not something I would be like hardcore against doing.
Like if you're in like Jalmaray, it might be like, oh, okay, well maybe orcs are rare in this case because they don't usually go there. But if you're playing one, it will definitely be a rare option.
True. The other thing, if you have the first printing of this, is they misspelled uncommon like 30 times. I'm hoping they fix that in the second printing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not like we're all human.
I just noticed it now. I can't not look at it, so I'm going to scroll further down.
Yes, Rick. We are definitely all human. You're correct.
Are we? Sense motive.
Yes. Please don't sense motive to the man behind the screen.
So, I guess let's talk about... I guess let's just kick it off at the beginning, and we'll try to make our way through these pretty quick because we actually have a lot of ground to cover. So
there is a question from Rose on the Discord about our favorite feat from each section, so let's make sure we do that as we go.
All right. So how about we start with Ross? Do you want to tackle the Asmrs, or give people a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at for the Asmar section?
Yeah, sure thing. So Asmrs, in case you are not familiar, are folks with a mingling of a celestial bloodline or heritage somewhere in their ancestry, or in many cases, one of the more interesting aspects that they talk about in this book is that Asmrs aren't necessarily born from a genetic thing. It can indeed be like a sort of divine intervention. They give several examples, like a childless couple prays for a kid. A conjurer just happens to deal with celestials a lot and is given like a certain amount of power. Sometimes just being exposed to like somebody used a holy sword for a long period of time and then eventually their kid was an Isomar, that sort of thing can totally happen. It's interesting too insofar as that they cover a lot of different, for each one of these sections that are based on heritages, they cover what the most common ancestries where you might see that heritage crop up.
Yeah.
So like dwarves, for example, have a different sort of reaction and a different sort of reaction to Isomars than say like an elf might or a goblin might or something like that.
I made a note in my notes section about how much I loved the Aasimar dwarf section. Particularly, there's a single sentence here that just says, dwarves believe that Torag himself forges each Aasimar dwarf, imbuing them with his zeal.
Nice.
And I love the bringing the heritages into the individual ancestries.
Yeah. It's like, or, elves typically have a lot of dealings with the Azada. And so, Muse Touch offspring are actually well regarded in Elven society, is one of the things. Halflings actually usually look to Isomars as sort of kind of community leaders in their societies. Like it's very interesting that there's so many different ways to approach it. Another thing they do mention too is the idea that sometimes this pressure can be detrimental to Isomars and can cause them it's sort of this expectation that they have a lot of like powers or abilities or things like that they may not necessarily have, or they don't actually have control over. So of course, the idea that like Isomars are not beholden to being good people, just like tieflings are not necessarily beholden to being evil people. So
they broke that stereotype really early on in the Pathfinder Adventure Path lines. I won't say where, but
very
really
true.
Early on.
So a few things of note too is I did actually like the discussion of Tianjin, which is a society completely created by Isomars, basically. It is the only one of its kind known on Golarion, at least so far. Though I guess we'll see as more areas of Golarion open up, maybe there'll be others. But I've read about them in the Tianjia like guidebook back when in first edition, and so I was very glad that they actually brought them back for this. And then there's of course the different heritages as well. So adding to it, you've got the Emberkin, which are the parry-based Isomars, Idlekin, which are from Nirvana, and then the Plumekin, based off Garuda, which is just always fun for me. I love I don't know, the Garuda legends. It's a sort of like Japanese alien spirit thing that's like a protector spirit. It's very cool. So
true favorite new feat.
So the heritage feat, or the lineage feats, I'm sorry, I should say that specifically, mean that you basically come from a certain like subtype, and so only people of that subtype can take those specific lineage feats, which is interesting.
What is your favorite new feat, Ross?
Oh, from this section, honestly, I am a big fan of the Garuda's Squall, as it encourages you to be a marksman. So you basically, whenever you critically hit using a bow, you actually apply the weapon's critical specialization effect.
Nice.
Which means that even if you're not normally like a bow wielder, I get crits all the time.
Cool.
Fun stuff.
I really like the healer's halo. It's neat. It gives you an additional d6 of hit points when you have healing cast kind of in that same region. And I just like having a halo because it's silly.
It's an interest, like it's also one of those like I mean, come on, you're playing an Asmr. When else are you gonna get a chance to literally have a halo?
Just be the evilest Asmr that ever lived with a halo. That's hilarious.
Yep.
A halo healing so I can bring you evil.
Yep. Keep my bad guys alive.
Mm-hmm.
Rick?
Honestly, I'll just double down on healer's halo.
It's
a
cool.
great reaction too, because it's a reaction, and I love reactions and having more versatility to use that mechanic more than anything else. Although there is a really cool, I think it's like 13th level flame jump thing, where you can enter into a fire your size and then teleport to another fire your size, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, up to 5 miles away. It's a pretty long range teleport, like relatively speaking.
So, especially if you combine it with being like a halfling.
Oh yeah.
Then you don't really need a big fire. You're just like, no, campfire size is fine. And any excuse to play more halflings.
That's fair.
True.
So moving along to the Azarketi, I don't know if you can actually even play them yet. I don't see anywhere that there are stats. Maybe they release those separately somewhere. How would you build one?
Yeah.
I haven't really delved into it yet. I'm under the impression that they're supposed to be introduced. We'll get to it a little bit.
They're in the Absalom book.
Yeah, we'll get to it a little bit later, but there's actually 2 occasions in this book that they reference things that aren't out yet.
Oh.
And so the book kind of future proof. So when we get down to the last chapter, I'll talk a little bit about that there too. But yeah, Azarketi are, the renamed, or at the very least the actually having their proper name be used for the species as opposed to just calling them Gilman.
Yeah.
So the Azarketi are what were Gilmen in the first edition, and are basically the survivors of Aslant. So they have a whole tie with the I was about to say Aboliths, but I think a Golthu is the proper term for them now. So they're
Luis in the chat says there's a free PDF for Azarketi stats coming out this week.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah, I was actually about to say they were actually planning on releasing it seems. So,
awesome. Yeah. So so you can play all the Azarketi that you want. So I really like that they break down by kind of like regions. The various like Azarketis of the Inner Sea is really neat. They touch a little bit on their Aslanti heritages. They give a variety of different heritages depending on like. I particularly like the the spined Azarketi, where you have.
It makes me think of lionfish.
Yeah,
it's a little bit. Yeah,
you can shoot toxic spines off of your body, which is just kind of cool.
Like
rad.
So, I appreciate how they're really delving into the heritages to provide not just I'm playing an Azarketi fighter. And it's like, well, now you can not just be like, I'm an Azarketi, or let me use Rogue as a better example here, but Azarketi Rogue with this certain racket. It's now you combine all the Rogue rackets that you have with all the various heritages of Azarketi that you have, combined with the, I don't know, what are we up to, 300 different backgrounds? Yep. And when you roll all those together, it just provides a near limitless number of possibilities for how you want to make your character and play your character.
An infinite number of threads on that tapestry. Well, maybe not infinite, but a very large number of threads on that tapestry.
Yep.
True.
And personally, just because it, maybe I'm the only one that back in the day I watched the old, what was that? I think it was Teen Titans cartoon. It was one of the newer. It was the newer version of it. But anyway, it had Aquaman's son who could do like water bending, basically. And I really appreciate that there's a first level feat that lets you make a shield by pulling the moisture from the atmosphere to create a shield to deflect attacks.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That is.
Hydraulic deflection.
Also, you can't see it here, but the artwork on the page for that, which is on
page
14, cool. is amazing. It's almost this like deep sea with like bioluminescent spots and glowing eyes. God,
I'm like, I need to play her as something. I don't know what she is yet, but I'm ready for it.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
You guys have a preference on feats for this section?
I mean, I like the one you mentioned. I also really like Water Strider. It lets you essentially use water to walk, like you can walk on water, kind of. Well, exactly. And that's always fun and cool.
Yeah. True. Honestly, Marine Ally, just because I think it's just fun. Plus, it gives me like an Aquaman vibe. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to befriend a sea creature, and now they follow me around.
Adventures.
Yeah, I mean, you get a familiar basically, but like, you don't have to be a wizard. You're just like, I'm a fighter, but I also have my friend the lobster over here.
My friend the lobster. Citizen
and you keep
Snips.
him in a bucket.
Citizen Snips. Yeah.
All right, Jess, you want to tackle the cat folk?
Yeah. Cat folk are awesome. So, this expands on what you already kind of know about cat folk being from Garoond. There are some new heritages, of course. They all have new heritages and some new feats. But what I find very interesting is that they really leaned into... They do this a lot, they being, I guess, the writers at Paizo, really leaned into what you think about when you think of cats. Yeah. So one of the new heritages is Liminal Cat Folk, because cats are kind of liminal beings. You've inherited a closeness to the far corners of the world where boundaries between dimensions grow thin. So it kind of plays on that whole, cats are a little bit magic and they're a little bit
of two worlds,
one foot in, one foot out kind of creatures. So it's very cool. And of course, they talk a lot about catfolk luck. I'm playing a catfolk in the Slithering, and catfolk, that whole feat tree of catfolk luck is amazing. And I'm happy to see even more lucky stuff that I can take.
Woo.
So, favorite feat though, catfolk dance. It's an action. You have the habit of always being in the way when other creatures attempt to move. You get to make an acrobatics check against adjacent creatures, and if you're successful, you mess up their reflex saves, and it's awesome.
Which is just how cats work.
Exactly.
I guess I'll jump in. I'll jump in with the twofer here. That I really do appreciate the first level catnap feat, where you can sleep for 10 minutes and get some temporary hit points. Which just seems like a great thing. It's just you lay down and you take a brief sleep to regain your energy quickly. And then at 5th level, you can get Focused Catnap, where not only that, but you also regain your focus by taking a brief 10-minute catnap.
Obviously.
So, it's just fun.
How about you, Ross?
Looking through here, I mean... I think my favorite is actually another one of the catfolk heritages. I know it's not a feat technically, but I still just love it. Is the sharp-eared catfolk. So you have big ears that move with your moves and perk up at any unexpected sound. You get a bonus to seek creatures that you can hear. But also, as long as you're aware of the creature via sound, once per round, you can actually point out the creature as a free action by using your ears.
That's awesome.
Like, over there.
That is so useful.
Yeah, exactly. Like, A, pointing out as a free action is amazing, but B, I just love the idea of some cat folk like, no, I'm pointing in the direction. Just look.
Look at my ears. That's rad.
Yeah. Woo.
Guess we're on to Changelings.
Yeah, that'll bring us into Changelings. You want to tackle the
Changelings? Yeah, absolutely. So Changelings, of course, are descended from hags primarily. They are they tend to inherit powers, especially of the occult nature that hags usually have. They are subject to, it's kind of hags as you know, changelings as you know them. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with them. It does talk more about changelings within the Inner Sea, and how, changelings tend to appear most often in Chiliax and Varisha, which, admittedly was already fairly well known, but I was interested in like the elves of Keonan actually having a fair number of changelings as well.
Yeah.
And because changeling was effectively a race rather than a heritage in first edition, the switchover, I think, is a lot more room to play with that, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
True.
So as far, however, otherwise, I mean, the changelings, for the most part, it adds a number of additional lineages. So different hags that you might be descended from, winter hags, moon hags, all that fun stuff. All that fun stuff, you know. Let's see here. As far as I'm concerned, I think I actually really like the idea of mother's mindfulness.
Dang it, you stole mine, Ross.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well,
no, it's fine, it's cool. We can both like the same thing.
Okay. Fair enough. I have to change. No. So yeah, you have the protective instinct your own mother lacks and will gladly suffer in another's place, which I thought was a very interesting, like, changeling specific idea. But basically, as a reaction, you can interpose yourself in an attack's path. You become the target and are automatically hit by the attack, or critically hit if the ally was critically hit. But it basically also, like, simply for playing that heritage, you get that sort of reaction that's kind of like a bodyguard style thing.
Yeah. Anytime you get a reaction is always amazing. And that's I have a changeling orc who's like a front line, and so that kind of feat is great because I can pick that up as my ancestry feat for something that I would probably want to be able to do even if I weren't even if I weren't a changeling. So it's cool to get that from your heritage.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I just like the bodyguard style feats in general.
True.
I just always like playing characters like that. So
well, that leaves Rick. We all look at Rick.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm probably going to go for the cunning hair, which is because it gives you that
really
cool that classic white witch style where your hair is prehensile and can do things for you. I also like that they clarify a lot more than what they did with in first edition, because in first edition you could get the prehensile hair playing a witch, and I like that this just kind of clarifies that it lets you do simple interact actions, capital I interact actions. And so that just kind of removes all the, it's like I can open doors and all the rest of that, but it can't, like, my hair is always holding a potion ready to feed me a potion or doing all the rest of that. It's like, no, it's more just a utility device than anything else. But God, it's just, I've always loved the imagery. I know it wasn't necessarily that great of a movie, but there was a movie called, what was it? Forbidden Kingdom. It was one of those classic, white boy goes to the East and learns Kung Fu thing. But, but it had Jackie Chan
like
and was it Jet Li?
I think that's
Jet
Forbidden
Li.
Kingdom.
Yeah,
I think
might have Forbidden Kingdom, Golden Kingdom, some sort of kingdom. Anyway, it had a cool white witch in there with old school. The CGI doesn't hold up as well anymore, but cool prehensile hair.
And it does tie in. Ties into the common thing that changelings do have hair that, like, grows rapidly, so they have to constantly, like, shorten it if they want to have short hair, which is interesting. So yeah.
Also one last shout out into the changeling section. They also mentioned here that all changelings are not female now. That they're just much more common, but if you want to play a male changeling, that is an option now. So or
that's very cool.
Or whatever, however,
or non-binary or any other
way.
Yeah.
So I guess that brings us to the Damn Fear. I know, Jessica, you have some experience with this in first edition, so you want to tackle the Damn Fear in second edition?
Sure.
We're chatting a bit.
Yeah, Damn Fear are essentially your they're not half vampire, but they're vampire adjacent. And the way that you become a vampire, a vampire. There are lots of different ways. And it's interesting because they, obviously looking a little bit like a vampire is not great, but they really have a lot of options for looking like the not as pretty types of vampires. So you can look like the more Nosferatu type vampire, which is cool because, there's way more than one type of vampire.
No, they're all Anne Rice wannabes.
Yeah, fair. Just like with the other ancestries, they go through and, like, kind of this is a heritage. The other ancestries, they talk about, dwarves have these powerful safeguards against the undead. So there aren't very many dwarves that are Dampier. And you know, elves have like a pride thing around being charmed, and so they're not super happy about Dampiers necessarily, but because they live for such a long time, they're great companions for immortals.
Sure.
And so they've kind of got that going on. So it's interesting to kind of see some of the interplay of how it's not just everyone hates Dampiers because vampires.
A particular note is the halfling section that talks about how the close-knit nature of many halfling communities means that Dampier halflings are less ostracized and face less discrimination than Dampiers of other ancestries. And the optimism of halfling culture encourages Dampier halflings towards friendlier, more open disposition than most. I just like that halflings are so nice.
They're just doing it right,
the Dampiers, like, you know, even your little Dampier goth cousin is fine. It's just like, oh, we'll just bring you in.
We still love him. He's still the, you know, that's just Eddie.
We don't give him hugs because he doesn't like hugs, but we accept.
But you know,
yeah, that's true.
He just eats his meat rare. That's fine.
True.
A few too many, you know, livers for my taste, but that's okay. That's okay.
And so my favorite feat here is Undead Companion. You essentially can have an animal companion or familiar that is also touched by undeath. So you kind of get a mix of a traditional companion and a skeleton or zombie or some form of undead. And so they gain the undead trait instead of the animal trait. They get negative healing. But otherwise, they're just a normal animal. So you could have a little skeleton cat that like lives on your shoulder or whatever. And that is very fun, especially because, you know, you already have the negative healing thing going on. So now your animal does too.
Yeah. You just branch out.
How about y'all?
I'm going to give it to Hopping Stride. Just because I love that tying into the vampires of other culture and tying into the, what are they in that case? You have to be Rushi, but yes. And so you can hop a distance equal to your speed minus 10. But during each of those, you're assumed to be like leaping. And so you ignore difficult terrain and pressure plates and hazardous things and all the rest of that. So just kind of hopping around the battlefield. I think it's a very
fun note about Rushi. They're the ones that are really into counting. And so they kind of get fun eye for numbers skill feats and stuff. So counting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. Two. So now for three. I think my favorite is actually Old Soul, just because again, I like the consistency with a lot of the particularly long-lived or, you know, nigh immortal ancestries getting access to. I just know more things because I've been around a long time. I mean, if I lived for 100 years, I'd probably just pick up a few extra jobs too, because gotta do something now. So it's like, I think I was saying, you know, why should elves have all the fun? Let's let the Dampiers do this too.
True. That is really cool.
So yeah, that brings us into the Dusk Walker heritage, which are basically at some point or another, powerful psychopomp said, we'll just reincarnate these people instead of, you know, just going through this whole hullabaloo with the River of Souls and all the rest of that. And then they had children, and those children have a tie to the Bone Lands and death, which is just pretty neat without having to be a Dampier and being undead. It's just a tie to death or psychopomps. I'm sure Jessica's just waiting for an opportunity to talk about the picture on this.
I am. It's the best picture. It's some lady in a fairly creepy cult robe, but she's feeding a slice of what looks like cherry mousse pie to a psychopomp, and it is the cutest thing in the whole
world. I think it's cherry top cheesecake, but maybe that's just because I love cheesecake, but it's pretty great.
But either way, here is a whole slice. It's not a spoonful. She's holding a slice out. The bird is sitting on the plate with its little mask on. I don't know what kind of party they're having, but I want to be invited.
Yep. So yeah, and it goes into the usual thing where it talks about like the various races and how they react to having Dusk Walkers and so on. They have a whole lot of fun feats in this section. My personal favorite probably being the Nisoi mask, which is you basically get a mask. As many of the psychopomps use the mask while dealing with the living. Cultures believe the unmasked psychopomp's face invites death. It gives you You are trained in Intimidation, gain the Intimidation Glare feat. And if you're already trained in Intimidation, you instead become trained in a skill of your choice, so on. But I love that. You also know how to make masks like those worn by the psychopomps.
Yeah,
and so,
a lot of them have like there's Vance in here and Katrina's, and like a lot of the feats are named after psychopomps.
Yeah. So lots of fun ways to tie all that in together. So yeah, what about you guys?
There's
Jessica,
three.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. There's 3 different feats that have reactions that are first level feats that are all related. They all have death in the title, which I guess makes sense for Duskwalkers. But there's one called Willing Death that's essentially an ally within 30 feet of you takes damage that would otherwise reduce them to 0 hit points and give them the dying condition. You can instead take that damage for them by an amount equal to 1 plus your level. But the reason is once you died because you valued someone else's life above your own, just as then you protect an ally by suffering in their stead. Yeah. So it kind of ties right back into this whole you've died before, you're acquainted with death, you're going to use that to kind of benefit those around you.
Nice.
Neat.
It's a neat reaction too. It's definitely up there with like some of the champion reactions, honestly. As far as like how good it is, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess for me, I'd go with Katrina's Presence. So you've adopted the calming presence of Katrina's, the Festive Dead. You might even have danced with a Katrina yourself. So long as you are visibly carrying fresh flowers or colorful ribbons somewhere on your person, you can cast Calm Emotions twice per day. It's
okay,
like,
if Elsa
really
was
cool.
in 2nd edition, she would have to take that feat.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's like that's such a neat like tie-in, and I think that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
True.
So that brings us to the Hobgoblin, and judging by the amount of time that this is taking, I'm going to say that we tackle that, and then maybe the person reading the section tells us their favorite feat for that section. So we'll do 1 feat per.
Okay. Oh, that's going to be hard.
Well, that way we can get a little bit faster to the new
we need to get to the new
stuff.
That's true. We do need to get to the new stuff. All right, carrying on.
So, all right. Who wants to tackle Hobgoblins?
I'll do it. So Hobgoblins, long story short, they do go over a lot of Hobgoblins. They do go over a lot of Hobgoblins from outside of Oprok, because of course everybody knows of the Hobgoblins in the Iron Fang invasion by this point, or at least most folks do. Yep. But there's definitely a lot more than just in that nation. Moreover, they talk a little bit more about how goblins deal with things in the Darklands, goblins of Tianjia, and the Mwangi Expanse, which is very cool. A couple of new heritages, and I know we're going a little fast through these now, but I do have to mention that my favorite feat from this section was actually Runt Sage, which is basically a hobgoblin who actually tries to get along with goblins. And also to some extent understands them insofar as like why goblins do the things they do. So you actually gain adopted ancestry for goblin first of all, but you also get a goblin ancestry feat for free for doing that. So it's just kind of, I was like, oh, that's neat. Like, yeah, I'm a hobgoblin, but like goblins are cool. I actually like them. So
rad.
Also the Hobgoblin art, I think it's a 34 there, is really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's got like goblin armor.
Yeah, well, and it's also it feels very much like showing hobgoblins from a society that is not central Avestan. So
fair.
It's very neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want kobolds or leshies, Jess?
I want leshies, please.
All right. I kind of figured.
So following that, we have the kobolds. Everyone knows your favorite cowardly little lizard people. So I know Jess isn't necessarily still a big fan of their character redesign.
They got uglier, like in this book than before.
Yep. Yeah. But it does talk about the various different locations of them. including having a sort of discussion pertaining towards the Sewer Dragons of Absalom, which is a nice tie back into the Pathfinder Society. So that's all pretty neat, and it gets a couple new heritages in your cave climber and your tunnel flood kobolds, which gives you a swim speed, which is also pretty cool if you want to play like a kobold tribe in service to any of your swamp dwelling dragonkin. Black dragons spring to mind. Yeah, they're just kind of fun. I do like the there's a first level kobold feat. I tend to like the lower level ones because I'm like, those are the ones I'm probably going to get a chance to use at some point. Which is Slither, where you're an expert at moving through extremely tight places, and you can take the quick squeeze skill feat, even if you're not trained in acrobatics. And when you roll success, you get a critical success instead. So you're very slippery. It gives me an idea a little bit, especially because their character redesign. It makes me think like salamanders or newts, where it's just like big heads and they're really slippery. So I like kobolds. They're fun.
I love kobolds. I just prefer how they used to look.
Speaking of look,
leshies. They're so cute and good. Leshies are essentially nature spirits that have been given a body, generally by a druid or some other being that has called them into existence. They're kind of immortal because of that. Their bodies are anyway. And it's interesting, there's a line, a newly created Leshy is at once both young and ancient. So it's kind of that fun dichotomy of childlike wonder and could have been around forever. This is just a new body for me, which is always kind of fun. They've added some heritages, including cactus leshies and fruit leshies, lotus leshies, root leshies, seaweed leshies. We actually have a question here, which is, if you were an adorable cactus leshy, what kind of character would you be? And that's from Hadrian on the Discord. I would be a gunslinger, obviously.
Yeah,
I would be prickly.
That's the correct answer, I think. But for my money, I think I'd be a monk because I've got spines. Like, true. I'm gonna punch people. Let's do it.
I'm gonna say a very suave and charming swashbuckler. Because rapier is very needle-like to begin with, and also if you're a cactus lettucey, after you impress the ladies, you could then pluck a flower off your head, and then
that's true,
ladies.
Nice.
That's very true.
Smooth. All right, that's pretty rad. As far as favorite feat, I really like the spore cloud. It makes me think of like all of the plant type Pokemon. But if you can just unleash a cloud of pollen,
seriously,
which is always really fun. Gloom. You can play Gloom.
Yeah,
basically.
So that's it for Leshies. There's lots of great Leshy stuff. They're very cute. There's a pangolin piece that's adorable.
If you're a Leshy fan, there's lots of good stuff in here for sure.
It's true.
Absolutely. You want to tackle lizard folk, Ross?
Absolutely.
They're naked.
I'm
here to give you the
Jessica's
art
takeaway.
I love them.
Oh dear. All right. Well, on that note, so lizard folk, of course, come from a wide variety of areas in Galarian. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of them are from Grund and that sort of in the southern continent. And they do talk a lot about the various kinds of lizard folk. I almost said leshies for a second. Got leshies on my brain. Yep. But the different kinds of lizard folk in their society, and just how long they've been around, because lizard folk are one of the most ancient ancestries in Galarian, even though until recently they hadn't gotten as much press. There's, of course, a lot of varied different types of lizard folk. However, they do seem to be variations on a theme, but I think that's because lizards in nature are different. They don't, insofar as that, I guess just lizards, tend to be very similar to one another, I guess, maybe. I'm kind of probably saying this wrong. Anyway. Long story short, though, there's a lot of cool feats. I think my favorite in particular is actually Dangle. it's a fairly high level feat, which if you have a tail, you can actually hang off of it on a surface.
Yeah.
And you have all of your arms and legs free to do whatever else you want. So if you're like a lizard folk sniper, you just sort of like hang off a tree with your bow, and then you're just like waiting for somebody to walk along. Which would be pretty cool. Yeah. So I don't know. I like it. I think it's neat. But
so following the lizard folk, we get into the Orc Ancestry section, which is really interesting in that it explores a lot of places that orcs are outside of the hold of Beltskin, or just Beltskin as it's called now. And it gets into like orcs in Garoon and orcs scattered across the rest of the world, and I think a little bit into even, you know, like jungle orcs and desert orcs and so on and so forth, like a variety of different I was going to say topography, but I don't think that's necessarily the proper term. But
no, geographic locations.
Geographic locations. Yeah. Yes. They could be topographers. But
yeah, of course.
And gets into like things like winter orcs, which is actually one of the new heritages. Although my personal favorite of the new heritage is the grave orc, since Beltskin's right there next to this horrible place that used to be Lastwall. So
also the art for that guy is rad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which is it's got this great, you know, powerful orc with his face paint on in the form of like a skull, and that gets into some of my favorite feats, which is actually just, it kind of combines almost every feat in this section, which are these Orc War Mask Feats. That you take one at first level that lets you have a war mask, a face paint that you use, or you know, you can invest an item of negligible bulk, and it gives you a variety of different power depending on whether or not it's related to the gods or land or magic or the unknown, and then you can get further feats as you progress to give new powers to it. So I love feat trees in heritages. I love the idea of being able to like expand on your character's strengths that you have from first level and make it way forward. This might not be necessarily the best time to throw this in, but this really makes me appreciate the expanded rules for doing like the Ancestral Paragon, that they introduced the rules that give you tons of extra ancestry feats. It's like I can see with how many options that there are, that I imagine once people get their hands on this book, more people are going to look at those options.
Yeah.
I want more.
Absolutely.
More. Who wants to tackle some rat folk?
I mean, I can talk about some rat folk.
You're more of
rat
Yosoki,
folk or Yosoki are, I love some Starfinder.
That's true.
They are, you know, Master Splinter with cheek pouches. It's cool. You learn a little bit about, you know, Belkzen rat folk, or rat folk that live kind of in the dark lands under Tianjia, which is really cool. I didn't even know they were there. Places all over Galarian, various places they're from, places that you might find them. There's Numerian ones that are kind of tinkerers.
Yeah.
There's some in Ulfin lands and whatnot. Ulfin lands. I don't know why.
Where
the Ulfin people are currently.
Yes.
The cold places. That's where you'll find them.
Lenorm Kings and all that area.
But the Lenorm, you know what I mean. But it also mentions Kazmaron, which is cool.
Yeah.
And you get some new heritages, and you know, you have a snow rat and a tunnel rat, so some more heritages. I really like. There are a lot of really cool feats, but there's a 5th level feat called Gnaw that is essentially like, with enough time and determination, you can chew through nearly anything. You deal double your jaw's damage to an unattended inanimate object. You can just cut yourself free with your teeth.
Yep.
And that's just so fun.
I know.
Also, it talks about Akaton.
Yeah, I was about to mention it. Yeah.
Oh, you can keep going then, but I was just like, what? Akaton.
Yeah, for all you Starfinder fans out there, they actually do talk a little bit about Akaton, so it's kind of neat to see a little bit about, you know, in Pathfinder. So, woo. Also, I again know we're going really fast, but the Uncanny Cheeks feat is so good.
Anything that lets you put more stuff in your cheeks is great.
More.
Well, it combines your cheek pouches with the prescient consumable and prescient planner feats. So you just be like, oh yeah, I swallowed a potion this whole time. Here it is,
There it is. You pulled it out.
It's like,
Don't mind the slide.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that brings us into the Tengu. And would you like to tackle some Tengu, Russ?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tackle some Tengu here.
Or I can take the Tengu if you'd rather take the Tieflings or Tieflings based on your preference.
I kind of prefer the Tieflings, if that's okay.
All right. I love Tengu, so that's perfectly fine.
Tengu are pretty awesome.
So Tengu are great. Tengu are your bird-human hybrid, initially kind of more of your bird folk, your raven folk. But more commonly known originally in Tian Sha, but they're so widely spread, especially along the western coast of Avestan and Garoon, between like the Shackles and the pirates and all the rest of that they're very common in the Inner Sea as well. The Tengu are just fun. They talk about the various places that they can be found, in large part mostly kind of expounding a little bit more on Tian Sha as far as like the very Tengu people there, although they do touch a little bit on Tengu settlements outside of the Tian Sha area. And God, the whole section is just really interesting. They've got the Wave Diver Tengu, which is kind of fun, which honestly makes me just kind of think of like a Tengu penguin. So you're just like, it's like I'm as comfortable in the land as I am in the sea, and you just dive beneath the surface, which would be pretty great.
I was thinking about one of those birds that hunt over the ocean.
Yeah,
like an osprey or something.
Yeah. I also find it interesting. They've got some character art in here, where is a Tengu that has very much of the classic Japanese art style, which is got the big mustache and the long nose and all the rest of that. So it gets into a little bit more of like the various ancestries and different appearances of the Tengu. And I think Ross made a note on here, or actually I think it was Jessica made a note on here, but I very much agree. The Magpie Snatch feat is great.
Oh yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah, it's a double action to let you snatch shiny things that catch your eye. You can stride twice and interact to grab an unintended object at any point during your movement. Yeah, so you're just like, no, just walking along and snatch up this thing and kind of keep going.
But
oh, shiny.
Yeah, and I mean, to be perfectly honest, one of my favorite things with the Tengu is just it's not even in this book because it's in their bestiary entry, which is their I believe it's a reaction that lets them peck you in the eye. So it's like, well, that's just fine.
Oh, my eye.
So yeah, it gives a lot of fun new options to the Tengu, and Jinx Glutton amongst other things also. So yeah, that brings us to Tieflings and or Tieflings, depending upon your choice of pronunciation.
Yes, I do enjoy Tieflings. I think they're very interesting. And so this one expands the lineage to fully develop everything that had been developed in the first edition version. So you got the Rakshasa, the Klipoths, and the Shackleborn, which I believe are Chitons.
I believe so.
Yes. Velstrak, which is a Chiton, is one of. Sorry. Anyway, yeah. So you got a bunch of different new lineages. It talks a bit more about where Tieflings are from besides Chiliacs, which is always good, because there are all sorts of different kinds, and I mean, even talks about a little bit of like a lot of ancient evils and stuff like that. Lamashtu, for example, has a lot of like tiefling offspring, I suppose. And I think also, of course, it does talk again about how tieflings are not necessarily beholden to be evil, much like Asmrs are not necessarily beholden to be good, which is always a good thing to reinforce. And as far as favorite feats go, I think this is probably one of the best named feats in the entire book, just because it is literally called Final Form, where you like completely tap into your fiendish heritage and become like basically a part devil or demon or whatever for a short period of time, wherein you gain the benefits of Divine Vessel, And then while you're in your form, you can also cast Chilling Darkness, Fireball, and Lightning Bolt once each. Or at the GM's discretion, they can switch that out for things more appropriate for like your lineage.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh my god! So you can enter your final form.
One of the things I appreciate with this feat is that it is a 3-action, so I can only imagine it takes your entire turn for you to Dragon Ball scream as you transform into your final form.
Yeah.
Or you could get like a Magic Girl swirly sparkles kind of a thing.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Magic Girl transformation.
Cut to the stock footage.
Yeah.
Breaking the choir monks.
And the best, it's a 17th level feat, so you can get that before you face off against the final, the final boss, and just be like, okay, well, I'm gonna final form this. Let's do it.
But it means you can use that line, however. You could be like, we've been fighting this entire time, and your friends are on the ropes, and you can be like, this isn't even my final form. And then go,
yeah.
So,
I mean, talking is a free action, so.
It's true. You can do that in addition to any other, as long as you're not pointing something out.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, and if you're a cat folk, you could also point something with your ears, and there you go.
It's true.
I think you can only have one free action, though.
Yeah, well, and you can only, I think that's a heritage too, so.
Cat folk. No, Cat folk is an ancestry, so you could be a Cat folk Rakshashka blooded tiefling.
That's true. That'd be fun.
Amazing.
I'm double cat.
I'm so cat you can't even believe.
Yeah.
So thank you for sticking with us for this entire hour as we jump now into the what you probably came here for, which is the new ancestries and heritages. We had a little preamble there. We had to get a chance for everyone to get in and get in some fun comments and all the rest of that. So yeah, the new ancestries and heritage covers all of the new ancestries and heritages. The name applies. All of the options in this section are either uncommon. There actually are a couple that are rare, which is kind of fun. And so this
also there's new rules.
Yeah.
Like rules.
Rules.
Special rules.
This section covers the android, the Aphrodite. That's how I'm going to pronounce it.
Aphrodite, yeah.
The Beastkin, the Fetchling, which I was kind of surprised that they didn't go with Kyle and instead went with Fetchling, considering that they didn't go with Gilman and instead went with, what are they, Zazie something?
Well, they did Rat Folk instead of Yosoki, and they did Lizard Folk instead of Iruxi, so I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, and so you've got your Fetchlings, your Flesh Warped, your Gonzi, your Genie Ken of all 5 varieties, your Kitsune or Kitsune, depending on how you pronounce it, your Sprites, and your Strixes. So I suppose we'll just jump in here. Do you guys mind if I tackle androids? Because I do love me some androids.
Well, I think we should chat about these new rules
well,
first.
We can talk about the new rules
tiny
if we
PCs
want to.
rule. I think I just want to mention the tiny PCs rules. You can ride your friends, but there are specific rules for how actions work and how the economy of that is, so that you can't just essentially get a free ride.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that you had to include that because you have tiny PCs for I think maybe the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the first time we've had tiny PCs. We don't have any large PC races yet, but I'm still waiting for my my centaurs.
Fair. Okay, that's all I had. It was weird, and I wanted to point it out.
Yeah, tiny PCs, riding PCs, even a little thing kind of talking about flying PCs. Since,
it's cool.
Delving into other rules here, but to tackle the androids are generally speaking rare. Although again, you could argue that they're common if you're playing a game in Numeria or any of the surrounding areas. It kind of delves into. They're a dex and intelligence and free boost with a charisma flaw, which is kind of standard for androids if you're used to dealing with them. I find it interesting that the sample names include numbers in them, which I didn't really find to be all that too. I didn't feel as common in the Pathfinder setting as it is in this Starfinder setting, since most of them.
It's super common in Starfinder.
Yeah. Including using like leet speak for your character name and all the rest of that is pretty common in Starfinder from what I've experienced. But yeah, so they've instead of they're emotionally unaware now, and so you have difficulty understanding and expressing complex motions. They get constructed, which is still pretty cool, but they are still they're humanoids with the android subtype. They are not constructs.
Oh, good.
And so, yeah, it delves into androids of the inner sea. I find it interesting that it actually talks a little bit about Androphen, but and goes into like mini-sold things. It talks a little bit about Sovereign, the Sovereign androids, which primarily are around Starfall, the capital of Numeria. So yeah, it delves into it. It's very interesting, and I like how they incorporated some of the rules from, I think it was the back of the first book of Iron Gods, where it talks about not necessarily other type of androids, but other type of synthetic creations, which were things like, this was an android, this is my protocol droid android was what you're originally built for. And so this is a polyglot android that, you're the C-3PO where I speak a billion languages. Or, this was an android that was built for just like, this is just the physical labor android. And so, but now, you're free from, the programming that was the whole thing that kind of enslaved your people originally. And, well, that's a whole thing. God, I just love androids. I just find androids fun. They're great. You can literally take a feat to make yourself just emotionless if you're just like, screw it. Where you basically just like, make it difficult for you to feel any strong emotions. Although personally, I just like how many of their things are so tech sounding, where these are the feats that work for it, but it's not necessarily what your character would probably call them, like the advanced targeting system, your internal respirator, your repair modules, your revification protocol. But honestly, I think the fact that you can still take a feat from the nanite surge is great for a reaction.
Yeah.
So
nanite surge
stimulate your nanites.
It's true.
Yeah, androids. I love them. I would love to see more androids in the second edition stuff. I don't imagine Adventure Path anytime soon because Iron Gods isn't that old. But androids fun. That's my takeaway. Although I will throw one criticism in this section. I don't really like the android art in this section. The android art in the cover is so great, but there's something a little odd about the artwork in this section. So.
I think they're purposely trying to make them look weird, like their limbs are a little too thin or too long, or their faces are strange, but I don't know, it doesn't work for me.
I think, I mean, it kind of depends on, I guess, your vision of androids. They definitely look a little bit more sci-fi than I was expecting, and I know, androids obviously like turn into Pathfinder and Starfinder and all that, but it's still one of those, like, I think, maybe just the design choices were a little unusual, so maybe just because it's unexpected, it's like, I'm not sure about this. But
so after androids we have the Aphrodite. Who would like to tackle those?
I can go on and do it.
It's basically Asmrs for law.
It's true. Effectively, that's what it is. Yep. So Aphrodite.
It is a heritage.
Is a heritage.
Yes.
So you can play any ancestry and still be an Aphrodite. They have several examples, including human, a kobold. If you want to be like a kobold Aphrodite, which I think would be fun.
Yeah.
Let's see here. It does talk about how, again, much like Asmrs and Tieflings, as an Aphrodite, you may tend toward law, but you're certainly not beholden to it. You don't have to be a lawful character to be an Aphrodite. As well as a few places that Aphrodites tend to be from, Egorian, Atambu, places like that. They do talk a lot about, again, how they fit in with the different ancestries of the inner sea. So like Aphrodite dwarves, which tend to be very angular apparently, which I thought was kind of a neat detail.
Feels like that goes pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. Aphrodite elves, which at first I was like, really? But then I was like, oh no, the Axiomites actually default look a lot like elves, so I could see that.
Sure.
Like stuff like that. Now, Aphrodite Goblins, that is something that intrigues me and almost makes me want to play one at one point. Let's see here. But I think of the various feats, my favorite one is one called Internal Cohesion, which basically your body automatically helps maintain coherency with itself. And so you and your allies can treat your wounds without healer's tools. Because
that's
cool.
As
long as you can get like the pieces to kind of go in the general direction, your body takes over and like make sure it works right.
So it's basically if you dropped a mini and the arm popped off, and it's just like I just got to hold it together until the glue settles back in.
Exactly. Exactly like that. And then once per day, if somebody rolls a failure or a critical failure to treat your wounds, you can focus your internal cohesion to increase the degree of success by 1 step. So you're just basically like, no, my body knows how it works better than you do. So
I like that one, but impose order. Just the very name of it is amazing. It's you're not going to misfortune me. There will be order in this house. So like that makes me laugh. The idea of like, oh, you're trying to like
point your finger.
ill omen? No.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. Objection.
A Phoenix Wright Aphrodite.
Oh my god. Oh,
that'd be pretty good.
Yes, this would be very fun.
I want to play that now.
Just made a new Ross character idea.
When you
it's even justified in this why
your
hair is like, yeah, it even justifies in here why your hair is like so sharp and spiky.
That's true. That is very true. Yes. Oh my god. Oh, I need to do this. Why have I not done this? Anyway.
It didn't exist.
Yeah.
But now you have this option.
Very cool.
Yes.
It's true. The next heritage in here is Beastkin. So essentially, this is you are whatever ancestry, but you have extraordinary abilities from the animal world. So you kind of can transform into animals or transform part of your features. It's almost like they took the shifter class and retooled it as a heritage.
Yeah.
If you ever watched Grimm, it's like you're a Vesson. So you can be like a bird guy sometimes. And it's got a little bit of like the were creature thing going on. You could have been cursed. Like there's a lot of reasons you could be a beastkin.
Yeah.
And depending on where you are, more people accept you or not. But it's obviously rare. You get the ability to change your shape. That's just comes with being a beastkin.
Yeah.
But you can get all sorts of fun. There's all sorts of fun feats that are all related to whatever your animal thing is. But quick change feels like the first thing you should always take. It's a free action. When you roll initiative, you can change shape into your animal form or your hybrid form or whatever form. But yeah, it's neat. And there's a fun sidebar that talks about the Ulfin Beastkin, because unlike most places in Galarian, the Ulfin don't see were creatures as a curse.
Yeah.
And so they actually think that it's an honor to be a beastkin or to be a were creature. So it's neat.
Yeah.
Turns out turning into a 9-foot-tall bear, pretty cool as far as the Ulfin are concerned.
Yeah, they're like,
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, you're a giant bear. I'm a bunny.
Can I do that too?
I go on a rage, build orphanages, because they're lawful good.
Exactly. I love it.
Fair. Oh man.
Do you have a feat that you like from this section, Jess?
Oh, that was the feat. The feat was quick change.
Okay, cool.
Where you get to, as free action, turn into your animal self.
Like,
you get to Voga.
I'm an animal now. Haha.
So yeah, that brings us to the Fetchling Ancestry. And again, these are the Kyle, as they're known amongst themselves. And again, I'm a little confused by, especially because I think they established at some point that Fetchlings find the term Fetchling offensive.
Fetchling is not a nice word.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually do mention that in one of the sidebars. But
I mean, maybe just to make it easier to find.
Weird.
I don't entirely know. But
maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
They're
the
very...
art on this first page is amazing.
True. Oh yeah, it's got some great art there.
She's cool.
I like her little plume. It's very her plume and her boots are both great. She has a lot of flavor to her.
Very jaunty.
Yep, they're a deck space. They get dark vision, which is always kind of hard to get. It's a little bit harder to get now.
Yeah,
in Ancestries.
It really is.
Dark vision is so good in second edition.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do talk about a whole bunch of fun things, including like you get all sorts of neat shadow-related abilities. And there's even things that kind of bring into like the bright fetchlings. I keep wanting to say fletching. The bright fetchlings, which is your body proves that shadows can't exist without light, and perhaps your eyes glow brighter, and your veins occasionally pulse with light, where you emit light. Dim light within 5 feet of you, which is just kind of cool. This idea that's like, I'm the embodiment of like light in darkness. So there's a whole bunch of fun things with that, and lots of interesting ways to play around with your shadow and what your shadow can do, having your shadow move independently from you. There's a lot of fun in the way that Asmrs can have really colorful things that kind of play into their Asmr heritage, where it's church bells ring when I walk past, or my hair always smells like frankincense, and tieflings are much the same way, where it's like I can really customize my appearance. The fetchlings can kind of do that with their shadow, where it's just like, while I'm standing still, my shadow always looks like it's billowing, or my shadow bends in the opposite direction of the light, or things like that. So it's really fun how they work that together, and then work that into the feats, where you can do a whole bunch of things with your feats, where, for instance, Clever Shadow, which kind of goes back to my love of the prehensile hair, which is your shadow can perform interactions such as opening and unlocking doors and so on. So I love the idea of, it just reminds me of that scene, I think it's more perfectly encaptured in the Bram Stoker Dracula, the Keanu Reeves one. Where it's, when he comes down the stairs and the shadow goes first and is reaching out. I don't know, the shadow play thing I've always really appreciated, and it has that fun kind of creepy otherworldly feel to it.
True. Well, and eventually you can take hefting shadow, where you can store objects in your shadow.
A lot of these abilities, I don't think, like they seem to be related to, or maybe inspired. I'm not sure exactly, but they remind me a lot of like the La Sombra from World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade. So I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. And they do a lot in this section to expand on the shadow plane. They talk a lot about the various places that fetchlings could be from. They talk a little bit about what do they call it? Beacon, I think is the Shadow Absalom.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a fun section, and they are a fun and interesting race. So
Ancestry.
Thank you. Years and years of breaking habit.
Yeah.
So you want to tackle the flesh warped, Ross?
Absolutely. So flesh warps are a rare ancestry. So
then they should be. They're weird.
They are very unusual. So you might have noticed that flesh warps kind of has become a sort of category in second edition, especially if you've been reading the best areas. A lot of things are classified under flesh warp, which, of course, it talks about a lot of the different ways this can happen. One of the most notorious ways in the Pathfinder, I guess, realm is drow flesh warpers who practice their arts on people. However, there's a lot of different ways for it to happen as well. Certain things like, living in the mana wastes can cause flesh warping, or even exposure to this strange energy that comes out of things in Numeria that nobody knows what it is. It's radiation.
Drinking some Numerian fluid.
Don't do that. Yeah.
You grow an extra eyeball. Oh,
You've grown a third arm.
Yeah. Also, I think the whole flesh warping of the idea, the strange mutations and everything else ties in a lot to Lamashtu as well. Particularly early on, again in the adventure path lines, not to spoil anything, but you have to deal with some crazy mutations because of Lamashtu as well.
There's also a question from the Discord from Loki. The question reads, and I quote, "Flesh warp, WTF?"
I think so. The flesh warps are. It's interesting to have that because it is sort of like a one thing that I think it was actually Rick who said this, so I'm going to say it and take credit for it. But one thing that Rick mentioned is that they kind of reminded him a lot of the it's an old school creature known as the Mongrel Men. Back in, I think, like, old school Dungeons and Dragons.
They made the transition to first edition Pathfinder also.
They did. I think they're in like Bestiary 2 or 3, somewhere in there.
Can't remember exactly where, but yeah, they made the jump.
Yeah, but anyway, it's kind of the idea of playing a character that is sort of this hodgepodge of a variety of different things, but I think it's a lot more interesting way to deal with it. The sort of idea that, a lot of the flesh warped aren't necessarily, it's not an ancestry in the common way we might think of it. It's sort of a thing you become or are, rather than a thing you were necessarily born as all the time. They do get a lot of benefits for it, by the way. I mean, you get 10 hit points for your ancestry, which is pretty big, as well as a free constitution ability boost. So, it does come with some perks. And, it does have a lot of different heritages depending on how you became flesh warped, or, what your flesh warp, I guess, derives from.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting bits is like they have a flesh warp, looks like perhaps a halfling carrying a lot of like Numerian technology, which I think is a really interesting picture. They have like a ripper, like chainsaw blade and stuff like that.
Chainsaw.
True.
I think of the feats, my favorite is probably Powerful Guts. Just because it plays into this idea that as a flesh warp, you've already kind of gone like you have this sort of like you are warped and mishappen, but you are also very tough because of it. You don't work the same way as everybody else, and so like when you succeed on a fortitude save to reduce your second value, you reduce it by 2 or 3 on a critical success with this feat, because you're just like, my guts don't usually work right most of the time, so
True.
Yeah, which I was like, okay, that's interesting. Also, coating of slime, it's just kind of an interesting one.
It's kind of a gross ancestry.
A little bit, yes, but I don't know, I think they're interesting at the very least. I'd be interested to see a character like that, but
true.
Yep.
Well, next up are the Gonzi. They are the answer to the Aphrodite. So they are the heritage born out of the untamable maelstrom, primal sea of all creation and chaos. I love them, and I wish to play one. I feel like I kind of play them a lot without actually playing them. But essentially, they are either born of mortals who mingled with beings from the maelstrom. They can have ties back to like proteans, which is cool. Valkyrie, all sorts of anything that's from the maelstrom. It says they resemble other members of their ancestry, but it is rare for chaos to manifest with any degree of subtlety. So they have big bright tails, or they have like the features that they get from this heritage are generally really flashy. They have a tradition of like they choose their own name, so they have gift names, given names, versus their heart name, which is the one they choose for themselves, which is cool. And it talks a little bit about where you can find them. Gnomes are pretty common as Gonzi, which makes a lot of sense, I think. There's goblins that are like Gonzi goblins near the Sarkoris Scar. There's halflings that have feathers instead of hair. Like all of these very fun things, I guess. There are a handful of settlements that have Gonzi in them, but there aren't really a lot of settlements that are just Gonzi because they have real bad wanderlust in general, which makes sense, I think. They have a lot of really cool feats, ancestry feats, heritage feats, I guess. But my favorite one, and the one that's probably just ridiculous, is there's a 13th level feat called Arise, Ye Worthy. You are descended from the Valkyries who protect worthy souls and can hold back Death's Grasp. You can cast Breath of Life as a divine innate spell once per day.
Nice.
That's rad.
That's pretty solid.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're very cool, very chaotic if you like high chaos. And they don't have to be chaotic, but their powers are chaotic.
Yeah.
In fact, it might be really funny to play a very lawful neutral, but your like genetics are fighting with you. Like that might be really funny.
Yeah. It's like innately I want to do these chaos things, but I have to, constantly meditate to fight my heritage.
Yeah, because you can get a tail that kind of does its own thing.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of weird things you can do. They're very cool. Very fun heritage.
Yep.
Yeah.
So following that, we have the Genie Ken. And the Genie Ken actually goes over the course about 20 pages, because this covers your Afrit, your fire elemental, your Oread, your earth elementals, the Suli, which are the balance of all, your Sylphs, which are the air elemental, and your Undine, which are the water elemental. And they go into a lot of detail about each one of them, what sections of the world they can be found in, how various different ancestries, you know, how the elves react to them or the dwarves react to them, you know, between like earth and fire and water and air. Of course, you're going to have a lot more earth and fire with the dwarves and probably a lot more air and water with the elves. But they're fun. They're interesting. I really like the general mechanics to them. Particular note, I will say, I do like that they have standard Genie Ken feats, and then they provide different feats for each one of the different heritages that you take. And each of the heritages gets something like 4 pages apiece. And so you get a wide variety of different options for each one of these. The standouts for me from this are... first off, there's a Suli one. I've always liked the Suli just because of the idea of being the balance of all 4.
Yeah, they're cool.
And there's a Suli, I think it's 5th level feat called Elemental Bulwark, where it's a reaction that gives you elemental resistance when you take damage from an element. So you're basically like, oh, I'm taking fire damage. Okay, reaction to absorb said fire damage. And, you know, it's basically nonstop. So as long as you have a reaction available that turn, you can gain a 5 fire resistance or 5 electricity resistance and just change it every turn. Which really gets into like kind of personifying their jack of all trade. I'm related to all of it. Also, I really like how they play into the idea of a variety of different elements, despite the fact that you're something like... So for instance, the one that really stood out to me is the Sylph, which has a whole bunch of really cool, you know, delving into the different elemental types. They kind of touch on what's the difference between just being air elemental versus something a little bit more like smoke, which still touches on air, and kind of goes back to that old AD&D thing of one of the para-elemental planes, where the elemental planes overlap. So when fire and air overlaps, it's the plane of smoke. Earth and fire overlaps, it's the plane of lava. So it delves back into that, and I always love when they kind of touch way deep into the roots there, kind of do a deep cut. And also, hands down, my favorite piece of art in this entire book is on page 114, which is the like smoke.
Oh, he's cool. Or they're cool.
Yeah, the smoke sylph character design, which is just
like
amazing.
Dream.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
With the gleaming eye and everything else, it's like it's that, and I think way earlier there's a picture of like a fox walking over a map or something and leaving little footprints everywhere.
Oh yeah.
I really liked that one too. So
very cool.
Yeah, could probably do a whole big thing on them, but Kitsune.
Oh, there is a question from both Rose and Ben on Discord. What is your favorite Genie Ken heritage? Mine is Suli.
Mine is probably also Suli. Even though that's
I actually
smoke.
go for Sylph. Yeah.
The smoke Sylph is real cool.
But I mean, they're all pretty cool, I'd say. I just prefer the Sylph, I suppose.
Yep.
All right.
Heather's not here to defend the Undine.
Oh well.
That Heather. Anyway.
Speaking of people's
I guess
favorites, Kitsune.
True. Kitsune, of course, being a fan favorite amongst the Pathfinder crowd. I know a lot of folks out there are big Kitsune fans. In fact, they will probably be very pleased with this entry, because the Kitsune are, you know, I mean, first of all, they do a lot of the stuff they did in first edition. You've got the change shape. Technically speaking, too, you can actually take a variety of alternative forms depending on your heritage feats. It does talk a bit about different Kitsune settlements as well, which of course, you know, you've got the areas in Tianjia, but it also talks about Kitsune in the Crown of the World, as well as in Engen, which is actually a settlement in Taldor, which I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't actually know that there were Kitsune native to Taldor. But there you go.
For Taldor.
Yeah, for Taldor. Let's see here. So there's a number of different heritages which sort of focus into what your tie between, kitsunes, of course, are that sort of bridge between the spiritual and the physical. And so it kind of depends on how exactly you embody that is what your heritage is. Like the earthly wilds are close to the material world, so they tend to deal with stuff where they're better at like fighting and that sort of thing, because they're just more physical or more, I guess, real, quote unquote. Whereas like the Celestial Envoy Kitsune are more strongly divine and empowered, and so they can actually invoke like protections because they're closer to the spirits that all Kitsune technically hail from. There's a number of different feat selections. Another interesting note about those is that you actually can also gain tails whenever you pick up an ancestry feat. Yeah, so instead of like in first edition they had that feat specifically for you gained a tail with like some corresponding power. Now as you gain ancestry feats, you also grow additional tails if you choose. Although it does say that it is optional, you technically don't have to. So if you just like the idea of one tail and prefer it, there you go. If you want to go for a full 9-tailed fox thing, there you go.
There is a question. Rose on Discord asks, thoughts on Frozen Winds Kitsune, specifically being I live in a cold place, but then changing the magics they get to deal cold damage, therefore making those feats less useful in a winter campaign.
So let's see here. Interestingly enough, the heritage itself doesn't actually change your spells. You just gain cold resistance and treat environmental cold effects as if they were one step less extreme. Let's see. Though, interestingly enough, I think there is a feat you can take for that. Let me see if I can find that. Maybe I have that confused with something else.
While you're looking that up, I think my general thoughts on it sometimes it's okay to just have a theme where it's just like, I'm from a winter area, I get cold things. Maybe that makes me less effective against magical creatures in my area. However, it's every creature in your area is not going to necessarily have the cold effect, and sometimes it kind of plays to the theme. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It might not be, mechanically speaking, the most beneficial. It's kind of that whole thing of if I'm going to be doing something and I'm going to be fighting against fire elemental stuff, then I want to play somebody that focuses on cold elemental stuff, despite the fact that I come from a desert area and a school of magic that really focuses on fire. So because the trade-off is you have cold resistance.
I actually don't see anything about it changing your damage type either.
No, I'm not seeing anything like that. I'm not even seeing a feat that does that, actually. But
maybe there is something more than we do.
Maybe. Or it could have been, maybe there was an option in first edition that's like that. I don't know. But for Foxfire, like there's the feat Foxfire, which is the feat I was going to talk about anyway. So where your tail actually wisps, glows with wisps of blue energy, and then you can actually make a ranged unarmed attack with these wisps that deals damage of either fire or electricity. It counts as a sling weapon too, for the purposes of critical effects and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty interesting. Oh, okay, I see. If you're a Frozen Wind Kitsune, your Foxfire deals cold damage instead of electricity or fire. That might be what she's referring to there.
That makes sense.
But I think that in that case, then I think what Rick was talking about definitely applies. It's like, yeah, my cool tail whip thing may not necessarily always be handy, but I think it's still kind of like a neat thing. And it is a first level feat, so I mean it's not going to be world shattering. I think probably most of the time.
Sometimes it's a bit more form over function.
True. All right, now the best thing in this whole book.
Go nuts.
You've all been waiting for.
They are sprites. They are tiny, rare fae. So it's a rare ancestry. They are mercurial little pranksters who just are very whimsical and exuberant and excited. And so fun. They're so fun. So many cute, fun things. Their names are just whatever they feel like them being. They get a speed of 20. They're going to have dexterity and intelligence as their boosts, and then something free, and then their flaw is strength, which makes sense because they're tiny. They do get low light vision and magical strikes, which is cool because it means all of your strikes are magical no matter what, essentially. So whether it's hitting someone with your fist or using a weapon, it's going to count as magic, which is really handy. It talks a lot about where sprites are, but essentially anywhere that the first world has influence. Really anywhere, because once they get here, they probably just wander around, right? They're sprites. There's all different types of sprites that I didn't even know existed. There's Draxies, which are like little fairy dragon looking things. There's the kind that are like your common like firefly sprites, the way you think about sprites as a classical thing. There's Griggs, which play that's the guy on the cover with the cricket legs. There's Melixies, which have the little wings. Nycteras, which are the best ones because they are bats and they are adorable. And there's Pixies, which are like the trickster types. So those are all the heritages. There's also like Luminous if you want to like shed light as a torch. There is a heritage for you to take. You can the feats are amazing. I can't even. There's a feat that lets you take a corgi mount, a corgi specifically.
Yeah.
They're
magical little beasts.
There are so many good ones. There's one called Catchy Tune. You create a tune so catchy your foes can't help but dance along. You get to make a performance check against their will DC, and if you're successful, they are slower because they're dancing. So there's lots and lots of very fun Fae things that go on here. But my favorite piece of art in this entire book is on page 130. And it is one of those little, I forget where the bats are from, but they're the ones that are white and they have the yellow like ears and nose leaves. But he's a little sprite bat guy with little bat armor with his hood off, but his hood has a place for his ears and he has a crossbow. It's amazing. I already told Rick if I die in our second edition campaign, I'm playing a a sprite, a little bat friend, Nyctera sprite. So
it is rare, so I'll have to it is rare, so I'll have to consider it. So
if you kill me, your punishment is I get to play a sprite. They're so cute.
I'll wade into that a little bit later on in my views on like the rare and the uncommon for this, and honestly why I like it. But they are fun ancestry though.
They're so good.
So and that leads us to the last of the new ancestries and heritages, which are the Strix. I was very excited for the addition of the Strix in here because they are kind of a quintessential Pathfinder ancestry.
Yeah, they're cool.
I've always been intrigued with them since they were since probably the first time I read about them, which I think was in the little thin was it Chiliac's Empire of Devils or something book that they put out way back in the I might have still been 3.5 days back then. But yeah, they're winged humanoids that tend to live mostly in southeastern sections of Avestan, and so in the areas of Chiliax, the Minador Mountains, just kind of up into what is now Ravenel, and then Nidal or Nidal, your preference, and then further east, I think all the way into maybe Isger. And they're very intriguing ancestry in large part because they kind of fall into that they kind of bring this the ferocious vengeance and devotion above all else, that they're a little bit xenophobic, but at the same time they are very strong community driven people that have had to watch their land steadily be taken over by Taldor and then eventually by Chiliax and all the rest of that. So I find them a very interesting choice and a quintessential Pathfinder ancestry. So they're winged humanoids. And so it kind of gets into the whole idea of having a PC that can fly. Now, importantly, they can't fly from first level. I think at first level you can take a feat that means that you can slow fall, no matter it's the equivalent of feather fall, no matter how far you fall from. You then get to the point where it's like you can fly for short periods. You can kind of like hop along. I think you actually have to be 13th level before you can get flight all the time. So it still balances itself like that, even though there's a part of me that goes, how unbalancing would it have been to give it a little bit earlier than that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time to wait.
Yeah.
Plus, it means a lot of Strix don't necessarily fly, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it's that strange thing where I think the Strix as a species and probably as an encounter, they're probably all capable of flight. It's just that if you're choosing to play a Strix, your Strix is not capable of it. And so it gets into that mechanics versus the setting or the narrative, the story to it. And so trying to find a balance between those, I can understand, can be very difficult.
True.
I do want to say that I particularly enjoy the Songbird Strix, where you're descended from a line of Strix storytellers, and you can fill your lungs with glorious clean air. You trill, whistle, and croon sweet songs. Yep. So basically, it just gives you you're more or less a very musical Strix. And they even have a whole sidebar about Strix storytelling. So it's a
there
lot
are
of fun.
there are those rules about flying at the beginning of this section, so that you can read up on those if you're going to play a Strix.
Yeah. So, but still, they're very fun. They're very interesting, and I think they tie in great to just the flavor and the feel for the setting.
True.
So, I guess that gets us into the last chapter, and again, I use that term very loosely, as it is 2 pages.
It is very short. So short, I almost missed it.
Yeah, in short, it's just ancestral gear. It's a whole bunch of weapons, some fun weapon traits, and all the rest that ties in there. The only thing I really had to mention about it, and I think they even mention it in a side little blurb here, each of the weapons listed in table 1-1 and 1-2 are detailed below. Grimplies and Conressus, not familiar, appear in Pathfinder Lost Omens Moangi Expanse. So it's another occasion where they're actually talking about something that's not even quite out yet. It's kind of future-proofing it.
And it's a lot of there's only maybe 15 weapons given, and at least 3 of them are for Grimplies, which is a pretty hefty proportion, all things.
It almost feels like they'd finished this, they'd also finished that, and then realized we actually want to include more Gripply stuff, but we don't have enough room there, and that it kind of felt like they needed the extra material for this book. Not necessarily as too much of a dig, but it's kind of interesting. There are some cool things like the Whip Claw, and I do like the Wish Blade and the Wish Knife.
I want a tricky pick.
It's
a kobold weapon, and it's like it's full of different little traps and stuff inside of it, which is why you can change it to any of the attack types. It's amazing.
That is really cool.
It's like it's my pick, but it's got a hammer on the other side, and also I have a tiny little knife that pops out the bottom like a switchblade.
Yeah, there's a spring-loaded knife that just pops out. It's like, ha gotcha.
Yep. True.
It's a very kobold weapon. I mean, it literally is a kobold weapon.
It is.
So yeah, and then after that's the glossary and index, which is cool.
Yeah.
I think it's like 4 pages. Like there's a lot in the glossary and index on this one. So yeah. So do we have any questions that we were not able to address whenever we were going over the other stuff?
We do.
Or we could give our closing thoughts, whichever we prefer.
We have we've already talked about the Gripply's thing. We have if you could rebuild or change one of your current characters with new things from this book, what would you change out?
I would maybe make Grim and Asmr. I think it'd be kind of an interesting direction to take for him. Especially one of the Asmr directions that's a little more related to nature, because Grim, while he is kind of classic dwarf and all the rest of that, he loves seeing things grow and planting his trees and watering his garden and all the rest of that. So kind of connecting a little bit more with that side. And that again, I love the whole mythology that dwarves put around them, where it's like they were forged by Torak himself.
Yeah, I would have begged really hard to play a sprite in Hell's Rebels.
I mean, I'm actually pretty satisfied with Nicolo as is, but if he were in a different campaign, I might have made him a Kyle or a Fetchling.
Yeah.
I think that would have been pretty interesting.
I mean, I really like Adria. It's just that I really want to play a Sprite, and we only have one 2nd edition game, so
at the moment.
I guess Clove could be a Sprite.
Oh yeah, sure.
Clove might actually work better as a Sprite.
Barbarian. That would be cute and weird.
Yeah. Oh, that would be amazing. I want to play Sprite Barbarian.
Okay, I'm in. Never mind. Clove will be a Sprite. That's what I would be.
I wear a thimble as a helmet. Anyway.
Oh my god. I'll use a pine cone as a bludgeoning weapon.
Yep.
Yeah, why not?
Awesome.
It's a mace.
And that was from Not So Free Willy. The second question, we've talked about this a little bit, but Lewis on the Discord asked what feats have the best naming. We talked about all the great names as we went, but I didn't know if there was one specifically you wanted to mention.
I mean, I think just for the pure punniness of it, catnap.
Yeah, true.
It's like, hold on, guys, I need to take a cat nap. And it's like, I lay down for 10 minutes, I get back up, good to go.
I mean, Final Form was great.
Final Form.
Oh my god, it's so good. I love it. Winglets, I love it just because it's like it's a kobold. You get little tiny wings, and it's neat.
Nice.
So, yeah.
If you were going to create a new PC on the spot, which ancestry from the book would you choose?
Ooh. Tough one.
Let me beat a horse. A Sprite with the Gonzi heritage.
Oh, jeez. Chaos.
Chaos.
I think personally, I'd probably lean toward Orc because I really like how the orcs are developing. I like orcs.
Yeah, they're cool. I'm with you.
But if of the new ones, maybe an android would be a lot of fun. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I've really enjoyed reading over the Strix section, and so I think playing a Strix bard that just kind of goes around, just whistles, kind of one with nature. Maybe a bard with the druid dedication, and I kind of Disney princess that as I walk out and little birds come down and land on my hands.
Oh man, that would be amazing. So amazing. Then the next question is about favorite feats. We've already kind of gone through all of our favorite feats, so I'm going to skip that question.
Although thanks for asking that, Ben.
Yeah, for sure. Ben also asked, he has another question. Favorite cultural feature mentioned in the book?
Oh, I think I already mentioned the dwarves, Asmr dwarves thing, which was great. So I'm going to go with the Ulfin Beastkin sidebar. I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was really, especially when they mentioned like having long houses to lock werebeasts up in for the full moon so they don't hurt anybody. Like where they just throw giant feasts, so there's so much food in there they're not even interested in leaving the longhouse. I'm like, yes, I love the idea behind this. Good. It's so fun.
I mean, I like the halfling section of the Dampier entry, like the idea that they're just so happy and so happy-go-lucky and community-driven that, you know, you might be a little goth, you might have little fangs, you might try to bite your sister, but it's fine.
Just to throw this out there real quick, not to take a second turn on doing this, but I don't have it immediately open in front of me. The Tiefling section where they're talking about halfling Tieflings talks about how much,
all the time.
Yeah, but it also talks about how much the Chalexian government fears halfling Tieflings. And how so they like go out of the way to like try to hunt them down and everything, because I think they're like they'll give the other halflings ideas and they're infused with powers and we can't have halflings with power.
Halflings are just
like
the best.
God, it's so great.
Need to play a halfling.
One of these days, all halfling campaign.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do it.
Everyone can take whatever heritage you want, but all halfling campaign.
Yeah. Oh, that's rad.
Yeah, sounds fun to me. You know, I think I like a lot of the expansion on Tengu of Galarian. This isn't necessarily because it's partially given to the feats, but I do like a lot of the references to like the Tengu mythology and like the origination of that. Like the feather fan is one of the things you can get. You can actually get like you can actually make it as a magic item that only you can use to use your Tengu magic, which I think is great. Like that really ties into like some of the original Japanese legends, which makes it very enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
And those are all the questions I have. I don't see any others in the chat. So we can do our final closing thoughts if you want.
Yeah. So generally speaking, I would say that I'm probably 95% happy with this book. Like the only small beef that I might have with the book is that tiny third chapter, which is I would have liked some more. I would have liked some more ancestry weapons for ancestries in this book.
Yeah.
Also, if I'm going to nitpick, I like the layout choice to divide the expanded and the new ancestries between the first chapter and the second chapter. That way, if you have a character that you want, more options, you can go to the first part. If you're making a new character, you can go to the second part. I like the way that works. However, I think I would have preferred if the ancestries and heritages were separated inside of the chapters in the same way.
Yes.
So if it had the ancestries at the front and then the heritages at the back, or
vice versa.
Yeah.
I mean, either way is fine. It's just,
because it feels like it might have been a little bit easier especially if you're directing a new player, that's something, if they played through a game before and then they kind of come back and they're like, well, I'm wanting to play an orc, or I'm wanting to play a halfling, but I want to do something new with it. It's like, oh, you can play a halfling and you can have some of these options. Little known fact, Heather loves elves. And so being able to go, okay, Heather, you can play your elf, but look at all these options now.
Yeah.
So that would be a little bit more useful to her, I believe.
It's just kind of strange. Yeah. I can imagine they might have had a lot of arguments about how to lay that out, because that seems like one of those, somebody made that call and it doesn't feel like it could have been unanimous. I could be wrong, but if I worked at Paizo, I would have been like, are you sure?
Yeah.
It's a big gripe because it impacts the way that you're able to easily find information, but the content is so good that who cares?
True.
Yeah. Well, again, that's why I'm saying I'm 95% happy with this book.
For sure.
You have any thoughts on that, Russ? Or
I think as with a lot of the Lost Omens books, I know that there's always this sort of idea that some of these books are crunchy or that sort of thing. And certainly this book is crunchier than some of the other Lost Omens books in that, a lot of it is feat choices, heritage choices. However, it doesn't feel like, to use the term splat book, it doesn't feel like one of those. It doesn't feel like we've just putted in a bunch of options. Some of them are maybe balanced. Good luck. There was a lot of thought that went into each one of these choices. And so I think I'm really liking that the Lost Omens line is directed toward that, because it helps expand options and give cool new things you can do without me having to go, oh, there's a new book out. All right, let me see what the overpowered stuff is so I can try to get ahead of this.
Try to get ahead of this.
Yeah, try. I will fail, but I will try. No. But no, I think they do a really good job of balancing all of this, not only with other options in the book, but with the options that came before it. So I just wanted to give kudos for that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It kind of flows into a little bit of one of my thoughts. I've hinted at this a couple of times. Is I'm actually a big fan of the fact that that everything in this book is either uncommon or rare, and in large part it's because I know there's the whole I know I find myself oftentimes on both sides of the debate, but there is the debate between, players and encouraging, players to be able to explore their own creative ideas, and also allowing game masters to have their story and be able to explore the story in the way that they want to do so. And so by offering up the fact that all of these are uncommon, then it technically gives the GM the ability to say, hey, I think the Strix are really interesting, but I'm doing a game that's taking place in Tian Sha, and I just don't feel like the Strix would fit here. It's a rare ancestry. No.
But Tengu are cool.
Yeah, but Tengu are cool. It's but Tengu, I'll make Tengu, common in this area, or, I'll easily allow them to be, to play it, or play Kitsune, or play anything else like that. And so I think by allowing, or by making everything in common or rare, it gives you that opportunity to just go, if it would be something where, I'm doing Strange Aeons, and having someone play a tiny little fey, character that can fly and do all the rest of this stuff and all this other craziness would not only possibly interfere with some of the encounters that I'm wanting to do, but also undercut the very narrative that I'm running for. you know, the story and the feel of the story, then I think giving that power back to the game masters, not necessarily as a way to say no, but as a way to say, come up with something that's fits better with the narrative. So gives you an opportunity to work with your players. And I think
I'll also say that I've been converting a 5e module recently into 2nd edition, and it's really nice because if I'm going in and I want to find a scroll or a wand or some magic thing, I can just look at that uncommon rare stuff to give them, because that's something that's like they wouldn't have taken. It's there. And because it's rare, it's something it's like, well, I didn't even know that existed. Cool. So it's kind of it's fun when you're picking treasure too.
Yeah. I like an idea. I saw an idea somewhere. I can't remember where it was every 2 levels allow a player to choose, like players can basically choose a uncommon choice every 2 levels. And or you can save that up and choose a rare choice every 4 levels. And so it kind of gives you an idea of like, I can bank this, I can get a couple of rare things, but it's still, you know, I'm not using something out of one of the adventure path books where I'm just like, I really like this archetype's 1st level feats, so I'm going to jump in and take this. It's like, so your character is a member of a super secret organization only known inside of Ustalov?
Yeah.
So it's, I like the way that it works, where it makes, I feel like it instead makes characters more special. Specialer, by allowing certain characters to be the only people that get those options. And so I think the same thing can kind of flow into this, especially if you're willing to do a rotation where it's like, okay, you know, in this adventure path, we can have 3 common ancestries, 1 uncommon ancestry, and 1 rare ancestry. Talk amongst yourselves, the 5 of you, figure out who gets what, and then you're out of the running the next time. So you can play it's like, yeah, you can play a Strix this time, but you know, next time it'll be Jessica's turn to play whatever rare crazy character she wants. So I also like the idea of doing something like that, where it's a little more democratic, if you will.
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah, I think that could be very good for a lot of groups, especially if it's one of those, you know, you're kind of having a hard time balancing between a lot of people want to play like these sort of unusual, very, you know, uncommon or rare ancestries, but at the same time, you know, it's like, okay, so is anybody like
from here
gonna play like, you know, we're playing a game in the land of Lenorum Kings, and everybody's from like, you know, Southern Garund or
just,
you know,
all cat
like
folk.
Tianjia or something. Yeah, and it's just like, oh, why are we all here again?
Yeah. You know? So, and instead it just works better. Hell's Rebels an example. Check out our Hell's Rebels actual play. And also I think the PDF for the player's guide conversion is already up on our Patreon. But I think I mentioned in there that it's like Tieflings and Tengu, I just consider them to be common in Kintargo because they are. You just see a lot of them. Heck, I think I made a mention on there that it's like I would even allow someone to play Strix if they wanted to. Although, mind you, like Strix wasn't out.
Strix wasn't out, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone was as interesting as like, you know, jumping on the whole, you know, Tiefling bandwagon.
Hello.
But yep. Although if someone came to me and said, "What about Silver Ravens, but all kobolds?" I would have gone,
pretty cool. Pretty great.
Fun idea.
Silver Ravens, but all Tengu.
Yeah, all Tengu. All Tengu
silver.
all the time. So, yeah. Anybody have any other last thoughts?
Nope, and I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I think it might be time to wrap up.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you all for joining us this evening. It was a little bit of a longer one, but we had a lot to say about what is honestly one of the best 2nd edition books that I think I've gotten my hands on up until this point.
Yeah, you got to get this book, y'all.
It's a whole lot of fun.
It
provides a whole lot of new options and interesting things that you can do. I think it's a great companion piece to what was the other ancestry book?
Advanced Player's Guide
that came out with all the various ancestries there and giving you a chance to really flesh out that. And the sheer amount of lore related to the Lost Omens settings and how these ancestries play into it is just a lot of fun. Honestly, it's just a fun read, and I feel like it's a wonderful balance of you know, it's wonderful balance between like crunchy and fluff. It's this great combination. I'm trying to think of a food that really mixes with that.
It's like a brownie with nuts in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like a wonderfully fluffy brownie with lots of little pecans.
Soft and chewy, but occasionally there's
little caramel topping.
I don't want a brownie.
Yeah, I'm really hungry now. So let's go ahead and stop this stream so we can go get something to eat.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's going to be it for us this week. Hopefully you guys can check back with us in 2 weeks where I believe we're talking about something else. I don't think we've announced it quite yet, but stay tuned. And as always, you can hop on here and join Jess and Jordan for some gaming. I think Ross was in one recently, and I think we've got some plans in the future to hopefully get a little bit more of the entire crew involved in that. Yep. So other than that, stay tuned for fun upcoming things from us. And if y'all don't have anything else, then until next time, good luck, Pathfinders.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.